How and why do we measure time? Is it linear or is it cyclical? Does consciousness change as a result of this? Come on, let's cycle through time and consciousness on Accessing the Akashic Records. Welcome to Accessing the Akashic Records, episode 14, Cycles of Time and Consciousness. As you can see, I've copped a little facial injury at work and not sure what the universe is trying to tell me, whether it's get out of that job or something similar, but it certainly seems like it's something along those lines. Now, obviously, the measure of time has always been cyclical. It's only in the last couple thousand years that it was actually changed to a linear calendar. Obviously, the measurement of time is actually taken from celestial cycles. For example, a 24-hour day is a full rotation of the Earth. A season is 3 orbits of the Moon around the Sun. A 365-day year is the Earth's full orbit of the Sun. Then we have a 12,000-year age or cycle, which is approximately half of the precession of the equinox. Then we have the full precession of the equinox, which is approximately 24,000 years, known as a great year. Now, it is well known that precession of the equinox is actually 25,920 years. The Mayans and the Indian Vedic texts understood this, and there's maybe an explanation for the discrepancy, which I'll touch on later, why there's 12,000, 24,000 year cycles spoken of as opposed to almost 26,000 years. Right, so all civilizations have revolved their lives and consciousness around their calendar. It's basically just a way to quantize or measure time and space, a way to sync up this time and space. So, for example, I'll meet you at this time at this place. We'll celebrate this event at this date, and so on and so forth. Now, if we compare calendars such as the Gregorian and the Mayan, which is actually a legacy which has been passed down to them from far older civilizations, but that's a whole nother topic in itself. So we can see vast differences. The Gregorian focuses on the materialistic side of space and time, which is actually rather inaccurate and doesn't give you the overall picture of things. So obviously the Gregorian represents time as a linear and continuous and has uneven months, making it all a very confusing and out of sync, which not only with itself but with the celestial cycles, hence a leap year is required. So we must also remember the Gregorian is just an amended version of the Julian date calendar, which was enforced by the Roman ruler Julius Caesar as a means of further control over the masses. Now, if we look into the etymology of calendar, we see calens was the Latin name given by the Romans to the first day of every month. So what does this mean? Well, calens is the name of the account book, the book of payments, recording the monthly payments and debts needed to be made. This was then actually given to the device in which we measure our time and space, and the means of how we measure our actual lives. So no wonder we're ruled by the philosophy that time equals money, hey? Not exactly the greatest way we should be revolving our life, is it? Anyway, now while the European Catholic countries easily accepted this reform, the rest were actually forced grudgingly, especially via violent means like the Missionary Knights of Malta and the Knights of Templar. The Julian Gregorian calendar was imposed as an instrument of power and symbol of dominance over the peoples, the Europeans had actually conquered, including the high civilizations, the Maya, Inca and Aztecs, all of whom happened to use the Mayan and Aztec calendar. Any of this that doesn't make sense to you, or you think maybe coming up with on my own, please do your own research, come up with your own conclusions, as I say with anything in my videos. Now, on the other hand, the Mayan calendar is quite balanced in its measurements of time, cycles of consciousness and space. Also, it's much more accurately synchronized with the celestial cycles. Now, the Mayan calendar consists of 3 parallel cycles: the long count, the Tzolk'in and the Harb. The long count had huge cycles in it. One Pictoon is 7,885 years, one Calebton is 158,000 years, one Quintileton is 3 million years, and one Aleoton is 63 million years. Now, what happened 63 million years ago approximately? Well, we've got the extinction of the dinosaurs, which archaeology says happened approximately 65 to 66 million years ago. So right in that scope. One could be off, archaeology or this Mayan cycle, Mayan Aztec Inca cycle. What one's more accurate? I'll leave that for you to decide. So anyway, let's keep digging and see if we can get a better understanding of what these cycles are. Now, the Tzolk'in and the Harb are considered the short count when combined. The Tzolk'in sacred count calendar, which is a spiritual or divine calendar, it consists of what we may translate as a week within 13 days and a month of 20 days, making a 260-day year cycle. Each day had a name and a numbering system, and that name was given to anyone born on that day, as it was believed the soul wanted that name, hence why they incarnated on that day. Now, these 13 moon cycles break down into 7-day weeks that have specific alternating energy. Red is the first week, which represents knowledge initiates view. Week 2 is white, which represents humility refines meditation. These are like philosophical meanings and why that person's incarnating within that week, or what that week means to that civilization, what can be done, what happens, things like that, what energy is happening from the celestial cycles. White is week 2, humility refines meditation. Week 3 is blue, patience transforms conduct. Week 4 is yellow, which power ripens fruit. Then each day of the 7-day week corresponds to an actual chakra. So, as you can see, they thoroughly understood the harmonic celestial cycles and the influence that they have over us within these cycles, broken down into all kinds of cycles. Next is the Harb, which is known as the civil calendar by the Mayans. It consisted of 18 months of 20 days each, followed by 5 extra days known as the Ayeb. So this gives us a year length of 365 days, lining up perfectly with the Earth's orbit of the Sun. Now, they also had a chronological stair-step of creation where consciousness ascends in a cyclical manner, starting with the creation 16.4 billion years ago. Now, how did they know when the universe began, or this universe began? Well, scientists today, thanks to the Hubble telescope, estimated it all began approximately 14 billion years ago. So based off the amazing, intricate, precise knowledge of the Mayans, with their architecture, their astrology, understanding of consciousness cycles, vibration and energy and so forth, that today's science still hasn't matched but is starting to come into understanding. I think the Mayans may have been a little more accurate, or whoever the originator of this calendar was, and knowledge. So their cycles of consciousness ascension or evolution consisted of 13 steps, just like their pyramid at Chichen Itza, and each step or cycle is 20 times shorter than the last. So consciousness is progressing exponentially faster. As you can see here in this diagram, we've got what we can term as the Big Bang, for lack of a better description. Cellular underworld, so the beginning or origins of cellular life, 16.4 billion years ago. These are broken down into days and nights where events happen, and each of them correlates to 1.26 billion years. So each day and night. Then on the fifth day, so is kind of like a consciousness renaissance when something major occurs, which is the dawn of the solar system. Then on the fifth night is the meteor bombardment. So it's a positive and what could be construed as a positive and a negative. The positive on the fifth day and the negative on the fifth night seems to be what they understood as being an occurrence on the fifth day and night in each cycle. Okay, then we have first animals, so the mammalian underworld or the mammalian cycle. 820 million years is this whole cycle, and what occurred on the fifth day was a transition to land, and the fifth night is the permanent Triassic extinction. Each day or night cycle is 63 million years. At the end of that cycle is the first highly evolved mammals. Next we got the familial underworld, so the family structure started to evolve. That cycle was 41 million years. Colour vision occurred. As for the night, it's not yet been figured out, I guess, what negative event occurred, perhaps some extinction that we're not aware of. At the end there, the first bipedal apes began, or perhaps the occurrence of some kind of evolution there. 3.2 million years is each day and night cycle. Then we have the appearance of the first humans and the tribal structure in this 2.2 million year cycle. The occurrence of fire on the fifth day, and an ice age occurred on the fifth night. So then we have, at the end, we have Homo sapiens appear 160,000 years ago. First language occurred in this regional cycle. It is 102,000 years long. Culture and art appeared on the fifth day. Extinction of Neanderthals occurred on the fifth night. Agriculture occurred at the end, and each day and night is 7.9 thousand years. First writing occurred. The national underworld or national cycle of 5,125,000 years, and we have origins of religion and Christianity occurring in the fifth day. In the fifth night we have the Dark Ages. At the end there we've got science and capitalism and things like that, so evolution of politics and a real understanding of the material world in 394 year cycle, so you can see it's 20 times faster each day and night. Then industry started, so we have planetary understanding or re-understanding, 256 years in total. There we've got, can't remember what that is, and I can't quite read it. On the fifth night we've got World War II. Anyway, internet we've got there at the end of that cycle, and each day and night is 19.7 years. Then we've got the galactic cycle, which is 12.8 years, but each cycle of day is 360 days. I'm sure, what's his name, Ian Lungold, who's a great scholar in the Mayan cycles, the Mayan calendar in general, I think he's worked all these out. So I do recommend checking out his work on this. You'll probably find out what's happened in these cycles from him. Then we've got universal cycle, which is 260 days. Each day consists of 20 days, so an extremely fast evolution in consciousness occurring. So every 20 days we're going through a cycle of a day or night. Now that ended supposedly in October 28, 2011. So we're now into what's known as the co-creation cycle. So where things are happening every day, a cycle is occurring, so 20 times faster. So that's their understanding of the cycle of those different cycles of evolution there. That leads us into the ancient Indian cycles of understandings of cycles of consciousness and time, which they called the Yugas. The Yugas are sometimes called ages. The Hindu calendar measures these time cycles called yugas or ages. Now, the Hindu astronomers observed the sun's orbit and our changing relationship to the galactic centre, and they called this Vishnu, a cycle of 25,800 years. So, as you can see, that's much closer to what we now term precession, and which is what I said is known by the Mayans to be a 24,000 year cycle. Here we can see the merging of this discrepancy. Now, obviously, with all of these cycles, things are subject to change and fluctuation. It's all very philosophical and fluid. Things do change based on consciousness. It's all give and take kind of relationship, cause and effect, if you want to use the Hermetic principle there. Okay, so back to what I was saying. The ancient Hindu astronomers actually called this a great year and believed that the rise and fall of civilizations is synchronized with Earth's distance from the center of our galaxy. So the Hindu calendar measures even larger cycles. For example, one day of Brahma and Mavantara is one orbit around the entire Milky Way galaxy of 4.32 billion years. Mind-blowing stuff. So my theory of the discrepancy in years, as I said, it's just a generalization and approximation or simplification. As I said, it's all very philosophical, give and take, cause and effect. Now, the Yuga or Great Year is broken down into different portions that have influence of the consciousness on Earth. A descending and ascending cycle of approximately 12,000 years. A golden age called Satya Yuga that consists of two 4,800 year portions back to back, one ascending, one descending. A silver age called Treta Yuga, which is two cycles of 3,600 years. Iron Age, which we are currently in, which is called Dwapara Yuga, and then the Bronze Age, which is called the Kali Yuga. Now, sometimes there's a bit of debate between whether we're in the Bronze Age or the Iron Age. You know, you can do your own research and come up with where you think we might be. However, I tend to think we're in the Bronze Age coming up to the silver. Yeah, so the Kali Yuga is two 1,200 year cycles or portions of ascending and descending periods. Again, so these terms pertain to levels of consciousness. So the Iron Age civilization will be a very low vibration, be completely or somewhat completely disconnected and disharmonious. Hence why in history it shows us that in these dark ages, around 700 BC to 1600 Common Era, humanity experienced great greed, food scarcity, poor level of education, great diseases and plagues and so forth. Then in the Bronze Age, there is a slight improvement in all those areas. So we see throughout history better education, more food, less disease, less war, advancements in technology, science and so forth, but still very materialistic in our orientation. Then the Silver Age, where an expansion of consciousness begins, a deeper understanding of connection in all living things, thus a greater unity and harmony among humanity, much greater advancements in education, sciences, spirituality, food production, technology, and so forth is evident throughout history in that period preceding that era. Now, finally, that leads us into what's known as the Golden Age, where civilizations experience enlightenment, and we'd have to go back quite a great ways in history, where the documentation is very debatable, because it's like pre-Diluvian times, or antediluvian, depending on what terminology you like best, and also documented by the ancient Egyptians, where this consciousness renaissance occurred, where humanity was experiencing great enlightenment and a knowing of the connection between everything in the universe. Pure oneness is understood despite living in a duality. Humanity thrives, wars non-existent, harmony and philanthropy dominate, food is abundant, and so forth. So we can see this, as I said, in the ancient Sumerian, Egyptian, Indian, Mesoamerican accounts of history. Humanity not only exists in harmony with itself, but also in nature, what's termed as beings or gods from elsewhere, beings from elsewhere, call them what you will. And I would say that due to this understanding, this is where they had 0-point energy by tapping into the aether or source field, unified field, time space, whatever you wish to call it. I would also like to add, not only do we see these ancient understandings of the cycles of time and consciousness, but in more modern times, astrology is very well understood to have influence over consciousness and its development. For example, the late Carl Jung and Manly Palmer Hall, who spoke greatly in these areas of various celestial cycles and their influence over each civilization. So highly recommend that you check out their work on this topic also, if you'd like to do some more digging into this subject as it pertains to more modern understandings. So as you can see, in present times it's quite likely we're behind where we could be and should be in our overall evolution of consciousness. This is probably due to control structures implemented by elites and opportunists over millennia. However, I feel due to the natural influences, it's inevitable that we will reach the next step. Also, it's no doubt that the great polarization of humanity is all too obvious around us, and humanity will not continue to remain suppressed as we are. Which leads us into the next episode, which will be on the concepts of ascension, harvest, rapture, the event, the shift, has many names, and we'll cover the variants and the commonalities and the prophecies and the science behind this concept. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Check out the links below for more research. Be sure to hit like, subscribe, and leave some love and comments in below, wherever you're watching this video. Love and light. Namaste. Love you all.